have Kachi. Kachi is a product designer at Paystack. He's been at Paystack for I guess 6, 7 years. But I guess 7 years. And in the past, I guess three years, he's been leading new product directions at Paystack. So that means that he's providing value for the millions and millions of customers, and it's hard to build like new initiatives in large companies like Paystack. So I invited him here. He agreed to come to basically just tell us what that experience is like.
I'll basically just repeat some of what you said. So, Kachi, product design leader, Paystack. I've been there for 7 years. And yeah, in the past 3 years, I've been working on new business. Actually, is our product teams change so much that the names of the teams and the structures change a lot. But generally, I've been building new things, mostly focused on Nigeria at Paystack for the past 3 years.
So what's this thing called? New What did
Um,
you call it now?
yeah, so it used to be called New
New
Business,
business.
and then it was called Nigeria, and then now I'm working on the consumer experience.
Oh, okay. So are
Yeah, so
you
it's
the
changed a lot over
the
time.
so like design executive on that side?
No, I'm not. Right now, I work with three other designers who will have I do consumer experience, which is like all the things that face customers,
Consumer
every
side.
basically new product that's facing customers. There's another designer who does merchant experience, so everything for people who actually run businesses and sell stuff on Paystack. And then there's another project team called Direct Debits where there's a designer working on that as well.
How are teams, I guess, designed? Who gets to say, oh, you need to be on this team?
Yeah.
Kachi is on the consumer side. Like, how does that work?
Yeah, good question. So a lot of the time it starts off from it's like every 6 months we as a company kind of like sets like, at the beginning of the year it's like what are we trying to do this year, and then we have like half year goals, and based off of those half year goals we have like general conversations, and then it kind of bleeds down into okay, like what are our top priorities for the year, and that can come out as like be a market leader in South Africa, or be the best place to work in Africa. Like there's just different things that come out of it. We typically have 3 to 5 of those. And then based off of that, kind of like product breaks down and says, okay, based off of these things that we're trying to do, what are the key projects we need to drive? And then we kind of organize around that. So it's kind of a mixture of like what the company is trying to achieve per time and who we have available. So sometimes we would have like 7 designers on the team. So there's been like a fluctuation in like how many people work on the team recently. There used to be a lot more of us, and then now there's a smaller team, and so the way we kind of split work across each other changes as a result of that as well. And then when we grow, maybe so for example, instead of handling consumer experience, I might move out entirely and then split consumer experience into 2 other projects that designers handle, and then I kind of lead. So yeah, it's very some people really don't like this, but I've done it for so long that it's kind of normal to me that the team changes quite a lot to match what we're going for at any
So
given
you're
point in
not
time.
always in the same space with the same people. You're constantly like
Yeah,
changing,
yeah. Well,
who you
when you say like that,
collaborate
it can
with.
have like a negative connotation, and I guess sometimes it
Not
does. But
really.
yeah, like so. For example, I've even though things have changed a lot, and I've worked with like different kinds of teams over time. I've mostly been building like new initiatives over the time period that I've been switching around. So yeah, it depends really. So you can still have like an overarching theme where and but like the underlying team structure changes a bit to adjust to what we need.
Is there anything that you guys call this specific, like I guess framework or just way of
Um,
way of operating?
yeah, that's a good question. I don't know that we call it like a specific. I think we just call it planning. Like we don't really have a. It's not. Yeah, it's just like every 6 months we do like a planning thing and figure out what do we need to change to achieve what we're trying to achieve, and then we figure it
So
out.
who even comes up with okay, this is what we're trying to achieve? Like what I
Yeah,
get what
I guess.
conversations lead to
Yeah.
that?
So it kind of starts off like more and more people get drafted into the conversations. So initially, like Shola, the CEO, is probably just walking around carrying ideas in his head. Like he probably talks to the most users, has most like context around the business and what's going on. So I would assume that a lot of it comes from like things that he's trying to solve for. And then there's like a second level thing, which is like we call it an OT, like the operating team. And there's like a group of org leads who then
Did you
like
say
have this
OT?
conversation.
Did you say OT?
Yeah, yeah, OT. Yeah, and then they come together and start doing like offsite retreats, basically pre-planning before while everybody else is still in like work mode. So this would typically happen like a month or two before the actual planning period happens. And then from org leads, it kind of goes into like, okay, team leads that's figuring out this is what we're trying to do. Everybody talks about it. And then when the planning period happens, we all come together and say, like, okay, this is all the things we've planned coming down. Like, how do we actually do it? So it's kind of like a multi-step process that happens. Previously, it used to we'll just do like a 1 week offsite, and wait, actually, previously when the company was a lot smaller, we used to do this quarterly, and we would all just be in the conversation for like a week and try and figure out how that would work. But then over time, it kind of like, yeah, you can't just keep carrying 300 people out of work for a week and like figuring out. So it kind of like broke into smaller processes where there's now docs, there's more meetings for specific people, and then everybody kind of comes in slowly over time. So yeah.
And it seems like it is not focused. The goals, well, one of the goals that you mentioned is not really focused on like numbers or metrics. It's more so like on a philosophical level. Am I
Yeah,
correct?
actually.
From the example you just gave, I think
Yeah.
you said, what did you say? Make it there. What did you say actually?
I said things like become a market leader in South Africa, be the
Yeah,
best
yeah,
place to
exactly.
work in
Become a
Africa, like
market invest.
things like
Exactly.
that.
Yeah.
Or night, just it could be things around those kind of things.
So moving on, what would you say makes someone a great designer?
I'm going to be a bit philosophical is not the word, but I guess abstract. But I think is like curiosity is really the answer. Just trying to figure out, and it's in multiple things like how things work, how they should work, how other people interact with those things. What's wrong with the way people interact with those things? Like I realize that people who are
What's
like
wrong?
super interested in that kind of thing. Like, because I think the skill side of design is like the easy part in quotes. You can kind of brute force your way into like the
Learning
design
tools and things
sense.
like that.
Exactly. But if you're not like, if you don't have the underlying curiosity to be like, oh, why is this thing like this? Or why did they do this thing like this? Why is this person doing this thing? Then it can, the rest of it falls flat from there. So I think that's like the biggest thing. And then I think as you become like work in bigger teams, grow a bit, I think there's like some confidence in that, even though like you're like super curious and you've come up with an idea, it's like committing to that idea knowing that it can be wrong and that you need to like come back and do it again, because most times like the first thing you do is like way off, and then you kind of keep struggling to just bring it closer and closer to like a better
Where it needs to
solution. So
be.
I think, yeah, exactly. Yeah, and what it
Yeah.
needs to be is kind of crazy for design, right? Because like with engineering, you can do specs and say, if we check this box and this box and this box, the product is done or the thing is done. But for design, a lot of it is like in the eye of the beholder. So you need to like have confidence to feel like you're beholding is like enough of a checkbox to to like make the
to
thing done.
move
Yeah,
to move forward. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, that's a really good answer. I guess this then ties into the question on, you've kind of mentioned it a bit on just like first principles, you know, and the ethos that guides, how experiences are designed and based that.
yeah.
If you just tell us a bit more about that.
So there are like a few things, and we've actually tried to document them. So I'm just going to like read off the list. Obviously, like, not obviously, but I don't think like, because when you asked this question initially, it was when I went back to look at this doc for the first time in like a year. But I think somehow we've
Oh,
kind of like,
bro.
Yeah, like we had the doc, we did it,
unconsciously.
and we wrote a blog post. We did everything, but we tried to like look for people that want already like to work a certain way, and then secondly, like build an environment where everybody kind of like like just does. We don't need to be doing like seminars or like telling everybody. They kind of just know that this is how to work. So the principles that we like use to guide the team are like service, collaboration, quality, clarity, connectedness, and delight. And yeah, I know like listing of words doesn't exactly like translate into real life all the time. Um, but but like we genuinely do try to just look at something and it's like come up with the best possible solution for that thing and then try to like add extra. And I think that's kind of like the overall the overall vibe of like what we're trying to do. Yeah. And then everything else
If
is like a
you
path to doing it well and then adding extra basically.
add an extra, I like that. I love that adding extra bits. That's it's like this idea of why are you doing just the 5-star experience? Why not 10? Right? Yeah,
Exactly.
that's
Exactly.
that's kind of like how I think about it.
Exactly.
If you wanted to pick like your maybe not your top two, but some of them that really like stand out to you, or you just kind of connect with, just more so than the others.
That's in terms of like the things that drive decision making and
No, no, in terms of
yeah,
like
or like drive
like
the design
principles.
yeah. To be honest, like I actually think like the two things that resonate with me the most, I don't even think are on this list per se. So I think like the things that I find the most um important. Like I said, curiosity and confidence before in terms of like what makes a good designer. But I think like the other thing I would add to that would be like iteration and just yeah, like that's actually so yeah. I think those will be the things that if I had to boil it down to an ethos, like a personal design ethos, yeah, those will be like the things that I would most optimize for. Yeah, and I think we kind of already talked about it in that like your first answer is going to be off the mark. So you need to just sit down with it and keep repeating until you find something that works.
It then makes sense to then ask. I know people ask. I'm going to be thinking. I
Yeah.
mean, how long are you going to iterate for? Until when, right?
Yeah. That's a good question as well.
So
I think
so
some
is
of
it
this
that
can be
you're obviously optimizing for quality, but then there's a thing about iteration that has to do with speed, right? So then
yeah.
how do you then decide, okay, what trade-offs you're going to make,
Yeah.
and then when to stop iterating? Like,
Yeah.
I guess
Yeah.
that's question.
Okay, that makes sense. And to be honest, like a lot of it will come down to the confidence part, right? And is learnt over time because when new designers come to the team, like we pair them with someone who is like an older designer for a while. So you work one, two, or three projects with that person where you're purely executing and the person is like thinking. And like, so basically, it's like we'll go to the meeting together, we'll talk through the problems together, we'll see what the requirements are, and then go through like solutioning together. So basically, yeah, with this person, like every day, full work day, sharing your work like and so because I think the reason I'm saying all this is that the ultimate answer is with the designer, right? It's like when you're done, you kind of have to know you're done. But then the way to kind of teach that when is it done is to work with other people that kind of know when it's done. And then you learn what the line is for you. And so this is why you kind of need to have like a general quality like as a team we all
Bar.
need to know what is acceptable and then
Yeah.
people are able to either like walk up to that bar or like surpass that bar and then we know that we have like a general area of like just good stuff is okay. Yeah. And then also with work as well, we have like a culture of like just sharing stuff really often. So if you share something that you're done with, people and it's not done, like nobody else will allow you, like will hold your shirt until you're done. Do you get like because everybody
If
will
you
give
wait,
you
if
feedback.
you share something that is not done,
Exactly. Something you think is done but it's not done. Like everybody will hold your shirt until it's actually done. It's like, oh, why is this thing like this? Why are the borders this way? Why is this thing? And obviously
hey,
not in a not in a vindictive, or it's kind of like a, yeah, this thing can still be better, like it's super close, but we can do this and this and this. So yeah, in the end, I think it's like it's just a general consensus of like, this is the kind of thing we like to put out, and just holding each other to that standard. I don't think there's any one like measurable way where we say, oh, once it hits XYZ, we're done and it's fine.
Yes, that's a really good answer. Where I guess in terms of you said stuff around like sharing, where does that sharing happen? Is it like in person? Is it something that is done async or on a
Yeah.
call, whatever, in sync, whatever?
Yeah.
Like what does that look like sharing?
These days, most of sharing is async because everybody is like busy, and so we try to keep meetings low and like share and on a like on a, how do I say it? Like as the need arises, we figure out how to share. So a lot of time now we have like a channel for design specifically. A lot of our design reviews and feedback comes from like a channel where a designer is working on something and then posts like, okay guys, this is where I'm at with this thing. I think this is good, but this and this and these are things I need help with. And then from there we can go into like, okay, are we doing a call because this is so long that we need to talk about it? Can I give you a 3 paragraph message that explains all the things that are wrong and all the things I think can be better? Or should we co-design and just figure this thing out quickly? So it's kind of like open in that way, in that stuff comes into that funnel. And depending on how urgent it is as well, you can just like put it and wait for people to come to it, or like literally say, oh,
Oh,
you
I need
please
you to come
enter
to
this thing and answer me right now. Exactly. So
it.
yeah, that's kind of
Yeah.
how it works on the design side. On the product side, this one we've not been very disciplined with it recently, but the general way like I've realized like works really well is that we try to do feedback in like multiple, like at every step we want everybody, or at least most people involved, especially the people making the decisions, or like that
Decision
have
makers.
a stake in what we're building, to see what we're doing. So we never want to collect a PRD from a PM and then appear 3 weeks later with a
With the
design and
solution.
this. Exactly. In fact, there's probably no way to do that because you'll be doing stand up, weekly meetings, all the other things that make you like force you to give an update. But we try to avoid that and instead focus on like small. So the first thing you would do is like make sure you and the person, the so um I'm going to like talk about design notes now. But basically what happens is like the PM, the typical like projects, so like 90% percent of projects will start from like an idea that comes to the team somehow, and then the PM tries to like make that idea concrete. So talk with other people about it, talk with stakeholders, talk with everybody, figure out like all the moving parts. Are there partnerships involved? What are the limitations of those partnerships? What kinds of things do we need to do? Are there any regulations around like what we have to build? So that initial conversation happens, and like the output of that is a requirement document. And then that requirement document, hopefully, in the PM's talking, they're also talking to design engineering. Like everybody is having this conversation. And then once it comes into like, okay, we've moved from like the defining what the problem is, we're now like ideating, shaping, trying to figure out what a solution to that problem looks like. The designer then like pretty much takes the requirements and then creates another document called the design notes with the perspective of design or like solutioning. So it's like, okay, we'll give you all the context again. What is this thing? Why are we doing this thing? What do we hope to achieve by doing this thing? What's the background? What's the context? We write it in our own words as a team. And then, well, not as a team, like the designer who's working on it or leading the project will write that. And then it's like, okay, what are the things that absolutely need to be part of the solution that we're coming up with? What are some possible ways that this solution can look like? What are the
When you say
what are the things
possible
that we're
ways, do you
doing?
mean like
So it could, yeah.
visually, or like what do you mean
So it's up
possible
to,
ways?
at this point, the requirements are very loose. Basically, you can, once you answer all these questions, you can answer it with any level of whatever you feel comfortable communicating with. So you can explain it, you can write, but usually like a sketch, a low fidelity thing, where it's like circle, button, ghost, or like a flow chart, just something that helps people understand what you're proposing. Um, then we do that, and then just link all the references. And this is good for two things. One is like everybody on the team can, everybody that has, because when everybody's talking, we all have different ideas of what we're doing. So this kind of like
True.
solidifies the, this is what we're
Mm-hmm.
doing. This is how much time we have. This is the bite we're taking. Like, yeah, we've read the PRD and this is like a 8-month project, but in this first iteration, we're doing A, B, C, and D, and we want it to take 2 months, and we want to be done with it, or we want it to take a month and be done. And then this is like the plan for how we would then go about filling in all the gaps till then. So yeah, so that's pretty much how that goes. You have some sketches, but you can do low fidelity, but we're not mocking out every single screen or like how everything is connected. You just want to communicate the basic idea of
The
like what this
concept.
function would be like. Exactly. And then share that. And then that helps other designers also like first of all just know what you're working on because we have like a library of these documents. When everybody's starting a new project, they go into like that Notion database and just add the new thing. So immediately by doing this, if you go to the product design notes table, you see like this is an ongoing project. This is what the project is about. And if someone needs to
It's
like fill
about.
in for somebody, all the context is there to just pick up and like go into it. So yeah, so that's like the
That's a
first
really
thing.
solid
And
one.
then right, yeah, it was Ope's idea. Shout out to Ope Miko.
I'm definitely still in that. I mean, we do some
Yeah,
iteration of that, but that's really cool.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah. I think you were about to say something else before I said that was a
Yeah,
solid
I was going
idea.
to ask what your iteration of it looks like before I continue.
So what I started doing, right, just on my own, is like before
Yeah,
I start a project, I get it. I get this idea from this big idea from the VP of products, who's also the PM. We are working basically
yeah,
hand in hand with. So I write out the why are we doing this? Like why do we need to do this? First of all, no,
yeah,
actually, what do we want to do, and why are we doing this, right? And
yeah.
what are people doing because they don't have this sort of right?
That makes
What is the
sense.
context right now?
Yeah,
And then say, okay, this is what we are doing. Bullet points, bullet point, bullet points.
yeah,
These are the actions that users will take. Bullet point, bullet point, bullet points, and it's on the Figma
yeah.
just beside whatever low
I see.
fidelity
Yeah.
visual. Just yeah. So that's what I
Okay, that's
started doing.
cool. That
I
makes
find that
sense.
it's been very useful even for
Yeah,
developers which don't really who don't really have context on why they're doing this thing. They just know
exactly.
that we
Yeah,
need to do this thing, right? Yeah.
yeah,
So just
yeah.
from
It
that
helps
perspective.
everybody when it exists like that. Yeah. Yeah. So after that, we go to yeah, so that one we share asynchronously, like everybody can read it on their own. That's usually where you start having like a lot of comments. It's like, oh, why are we waiting to before we do like 2FA? Why can't we do FA 2FA off the bat? Like things that are like hidden assumptions start to come out small by small in that kind of situation. And then everybody agrees on, okay, yeah, I agree, I'll edit the document. And then, oh, this one, no, I actually think we should push it down a bit. So we do all of that and then agree on exactly what we're doing. And then the next step is like low fidelity stuff. So this is especially helpful with like new things, of course. So with new things, we want to like just see the whole flow end to end. Sometimes even with like scenario stories, like, oh yeah, when this person is on the screen, this is how we expect them to be like living their life, or like basically all the other stuff that explains the. We're still focusing on like the solution, but we're not going into design details yet. We're solving for flows, we're solving for elements that should exist or should not exist, like that kind of thing. So we agree on that as well. And then that one is usually better to share because nobody's going to like just jump into your low fidelity doc and understand everything. So I usually try to push people to share those as like screen recordings. Just do like a 5 minute loom, walk through everything, explain it, link it in your design note so that everybody who goes back to that can still follow along. And then just like we have that. And then usually that one the conversation will happen either in a thread of comments, which is usually the preferred way, or like on Loom where everybody's typing there. So yeah, that's like the second step of this whole process. And then there we have more clarity on exactly what the solution contains or is like or how it works. And then we then move to like higher fidelity stuff where it's like, okay, now it's time for me to like make everything pretty, make everything fine, choose the colors, do all the many things. And then that's where we can now start having conversations about can it pop and all those other things. But by then, we've solved all the hard things and we're kind of just
Mm,
presenting the solution. Well, not all the hard things, but we solved a lot of the hard things and we're talking about like
most of
presentation
them.
and that. Like, yeah, so it makes the work, it makes the conversations a lot easier, straightforward when we do that.
Streamlined.
And the times where we get like cocky and we are like, yeah, we're just going to jump into high fidelity. We spend like 2, 3 weeks and then come present the high fidelity, and someone is like, oh, but why did we do 2FA? Why did we do this thing? And it's like, yeah, if we had just written this down one day last week, we would have avoided some of this. So yeah.
All this, yeah, going back and forth. Yeah, that's a strong one that I think everybody should actually. I guess this then ties into just this idea of. I mean, I know you talked about you spending like 3 years trying to figure out like new initiatives. I
Yeah.
mean, that had taken on new names at your time at Paystack. I mean, how do
Mm.
you? What does that look like? Just being in a team like that,
Yeah.
how do you even just get people to rally around just something that is improving a
Yeah.
bit? Yeah, how what does that look like?
So I think luckily for me, a lot of the things that in fact, sometimes I'm the one that people are trying to rally around to build something new because I'm like, why do we need to be doing this? Like it doesn't make sense to me. And so I think it doesn't always come from like me on the new business team, for example, bringing up stuff to do. It can come from like different places. So, but yeah, that being said, like I think the answer is just like a storytelling thing. So, for example, like when we were trying to figure out, or it's just sometimes it's a storytelling thing. Sometimes it's that the need is just so obvious. That it's like, why are we not trying this thing? So, I'll give an example. Like when we were working on direct debits, um, Shola, the CEO of Paystack, just got off a call with a merchant who was asking for like physical terminals. And then in like thinking about it, he's like, your problem is not physical terminals. Your problem is that you have agents who need to collect money. And right now they already collect money through like transfers. The transfers just go to like your head of finance or whoever it is, and then they have to confirm. So it's like zooming that
Mm,
problem down to like what's the actual problem this person is trying to solve, and is the thing they're asking for really the thing that's going to solve their problem? And in this case, the answer was no. Luckily, it was a day when all of us were in the office, so he just comes downstairs to the kitchen, and there's like four of us there. There was like a tech lead, there was me, the design lead, and there's some other people. And it's like, yo, is there some way that we can get these people, like we have so many products that we can tie together, right? Is there some way that we can tie in, um we have something called virtual accounts, like dedicated virtual accounts. There way we can tie this with some sort of notification so that the person who is the agent who's supposed to receive the money gets the actual like notification that solves this whole problem. And then we just like started speedballing ideas there. It's like, oh, okay, what if we build an app? It's like, oh, an app would take too long. Is there a shorter way? And then we did it and landed on like, wait, what if we just send the alerts on WhatsApp? Like, and then it's like, oh, okay, well that works. Give this person an account number, they get the alert on WhatsApp, they confirm it, like everybody moves on. And it's like, okay, cool. And then, so it's like the storytelling of just convincing people, sometimes like getting people to think about the problem with you to help like figure out the best way to do it. Cause and then just like explaining the problem in a way that resonates with other people on the team so that they are excited. Because by the time he was done, three of us that already had work, like there was a developer relations person in the like conversation. There was a tech lead. Like everybody is already like, oh, okay, we can even print out like designs. And then I'm going upstairs to start doing like designs for like how we should show the account numbers. Someone is going to say, oh, we use this API and this is the thing that we need to change. So yeah, it's like is I think that's like the easiest way, kind of like just selling the story of the thing you're trying to do and then getting people to buy in. Sometimes it's not that easy. Like that one was so obvious and so small that it was an easy thing. But it's kind of crazy how like for some reason it wasn't something we already had. Because when we were like "Yeah, this makes so much sense. Why didn't we do this like ages ago? Because it wasn't this difficult thing to solve personally. Yeah. For some
yeah.
other things, it's like, oh, let's build a consumer transfer app. For that one, like we had to someone had to call a meeting and explain to us step by step why it made sense for Paystack to do that. Because everybody was like, yeah, no, that's not what we're doing. Like we don't want to do that. So yeah, I think
Yeah.
storytelling and kind of like it's a bit of selling, it's a bit of like just convincing people and having a lot of faith in what you're trying to do.
Yeah. I mean, you just spoke a little bit about the new product that's going to consumer product is going to come from Paystack, Zap.
Yeah,
Um, from a design point of view, are there any like sort of improving like design concept that you're applying, like something that isn't really like the status quo that you're trying
yeah,
to do with the product? Are you needed like some sort of buy-in or yes to sort of move forward? And
yeah,
how do you navigate that?
yeah. To be honest, yeah, there's like so we at the beginning of luckily this was one of the projects where we followed like the like actually articulating the problem multiple times, right? Because it was one that everybody that hears it first is like, why? And then we kind of so in trying to even convince myself,
It's
it's
not
like,
an
okay,
obvious
this
why.
person exactly this person has convinced me why this thing should happen. Can I articulate that to like everybody else? And so we
And
did a
the
lot
next
of like
person.
exactly. So there was a lot of like documentation of like why is this thing important? What are we doing differently? Like why? And I think that helped with just making the case. Um, regarding design patterns, a lot of it was just we had like in knowing what we were trying to do, we had a few guiding principles. It's like we want this thing to be fast, we want it to be reliable, we want you to do a transfer in 3 clicks. How do we do it so that when I open an app, I can transfer in like 1, 2, 3 clicks and I'm done? So yeah, so I don't think there was any pushback per se. It was just like seeing patterns that other people are using in different places, trying it out, getting people to try patterns that they're not used to.
Familiar.
So, for example, the way most bank apps or like most transfer apps have like a account number bank, and then they have a separate flow for sending to like beneficiaries or like people that whose account you saved. What we did was like we just joined those two things together, and I didn't realize how hard it would be to implement like engineering wise because it's been probably been like some of the hardest things we have to do. But basically, once you start typing, and then another thing we do is like another thing we used to do was that we used to save every beneficiary by default. And it sounds like a crazy thing to do. Like I don't want to save everybody's account number that I send money to, but like it's such a crazy thing because it reduces like I don't ever have to save like my Uber guys. Like I don't have to remember to save. So some stories that we've heard is like, oh, I was in an Uber and the guy's face was familiar, but like when I opened Zap to transfer to him, his name and account number came up immediately. So I just didn't have to type like that. This thing. So it's like, how do we do it in such a way that everything is there for you, but it's not like jumping in your face? And there's not much I can save like with just words, but like I think those are some new patterns that came out of like yeah I don't want to ever have to type someone's account 2 times if I'm using this
Two
thing
times,
and
right?
so we just yeah
Yeah.
so like that works or I don't want to like know the difference between a new account and a like old account like that's not something that's useful for me as someone sending money. It's just like if I type 110 and it exists there like let's just surface it and bring it up. If I type an account number, can we just know what bank it is and like just fill it in? And so it's just like a lot of like extra
Smart.
affordances to just make it super easy
Smart
for people.
default.
Yeah. So those are like
Yeah.
some things that we're trying to do. And then yeah. And then we've been trying other things as well. It's like, can I point my camera at a 10-digit number and just have it like figure out where the number is in that text and choose the bank like this? Yeah. There's a bunch of small
Yeah,
things like
yeah.
that basically.
Yeah, I wouldn't call that small things, but it's like you said, everything that and then extra. And I see that
Exactly.
just
Exactly.
resonating in this project as well. So that's actually
Yeah.
amazing. I can't wait for it to be out and then you can speak about it a bit
Yeah.
more.
I can't wait. I can't
Um
wait to.
yeah, yeah. So you are the are you the only designer in this project or
No,
no?
I'm not. I'm working with another designer as well, and so we've been on it together for a bit.
So like you've spoken a bit about like some things that you've heard, right? You're talking about, oh, we heard I don't want to type in an account number twice. I just want
Yeah,
to not think about it, right?
yeah,
How do you go about this sort of like inside gathering? And how do you do that often? I
yeah.
guess.
Yeah, that's a good question. So luckily, a lot of the people who are using like this specific product are like colleagues, and so we just if I go to the office, like just by virtue of being there, five people will come and meet me and be like, yeah, when I transferred this money yesterday, this thing wasn't. I didn't like the way this thing was happening. So a lot of it is like because our cohort is so small, we get direct feedback from people that are using it. We also like just have a Slack channel where people come to complain or like say when something isn't as. So in this case, it's like we don't have to do so much work. Of course, we still have to be a bit intentional about knowing when, because there's times where everybody's facing the same problem too, but for some reason, nobody has just talked about it. So it's kind of a balance. Luckily, we get a lot of things that really painful for people. We hear from them. Things that are not so painful, they just manage because it's like, oh, our guys are doing this thing. We'll figure it out. And then occasionally, like when someone that used to use it a lot chance, like we check and say, oh, okay, we noticed they are not using this thing anymore. What happened? And then we find
What
new
happened?
problems from there. Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, right now it's super small, so it's like it's not really like a problem. And another thing is like we haven't even hit like so another thing that we've been thinking about before, like we formalize our feedback, insights, research, is like we haven't even built like the complete thing. Like when we said this is V1 that we want to build in X number of weeks, we still haven't hit like that endpoint. So even though we want to hear things along the way, it will also be good to hear what the feedback for the actual vision of the thing that we were trying to build is.
Yeah, so this then drives into the question that I had on, just like you talked about, before I take on a new challenge, a new product, I really have to ask myself, am I ready to grind it out? How confident am I confident in this particular solution?
Yeah.
Or even in this particular like problem, not even solution, this particular problem, like
Yeah.
is this a good enough problem for me to put myself on the line? So how do you approach just like making good decisions,
Yeah.
especially when you then go into the project and there's a lot of strong opposing opinions? Like how do you
Yeah,
then deal
that's a
with
good
that?
question. So, like, this realization is like 1 month old, so it's not. I've not had the chance to apply it properly yet. So,
Yay.
yeah, it's a very new thing because I was just
It's
thinking about all the
new.
things I had been doing. I'm just like, yeah, I can't do this again. Like, I can't work on something for a year and then it's just like, oh yeah, we're shutting it down because like nobody like cares as much about this thing and it doesn't feel like we can hit the level of like beauty, excellence, like delights that we're trying to get. So it's like let's kill it, and like that has happened a lot of times, and it just feels like yeah, you just keep
For you?
yeah for me as well because I think over this past like it's only recently that the things that the new business team has like and please don't let them not I hope my boss doesn't hear this but yeah it's only recently that the things that the new business team has been working on have actually been like shipping or looking like they're going to a lot of like the first few things is just like we spent too much time getting to the V1 to the point like by the time it's out we've made so many trade-offs because also like when a group of people just keep talking about the same thing every day like there's only so much you can say, right? If the progress is not moving as fast, all that's happening is just like yarns and overthinking and like this weird cycle of everybody just talking about the same things and doing the same things. And like, so
Eh,
so yeah, like yeah, I think that's the so now a lot more things are going. Obviously, it's not perfect yet. We still need to figure out like how to get things done faster, like figure out frameworks around it. But I think like those frameworks are developing like slowly, especially as I keep like doing more of these things. In terms of like how do I decide? I mean, at work, it's also good to have other people that care that much, right? So you can't like if you're the only person that really cares, um, you're going to you can't do it alone. Like you really need everything that works is like everybody is pulling their weight. So you can't do it alone. So that's the other thing as well. So it's like really just a lot of it is like storytelling, visual setting, whatever you want to call it. So like just making sure everybody always knows like what we're trying to do. Because when you can be doing stand up every day and we're always like doing oh have you done your task for today and we do that and forget where we're trying to go
why?
or like where we're doing something or how fast we need to be moving. So I think like there's a couple of things like that. Making sure that it's clear and then when it's clear like that, making sure that everybody's on the same page about what we're trying to do, at what speed are we trying to move at, what are we trying to achieve, like those kinds of things. So yeah, I mean, right now this is my work, right, and this is my team. So new things will keep coming to me. But I guess now I have a better framework for figure like making it more likely to work out.
Do you want to speak about just like non-negotiables for you, just for the design process? What does that?
So I've read like serious designers like Bignelli and Data Rams and how they all come up with like a canon or like a set of rules um and I like that and I appreciate that and it's good to see like what the OGs care about. But in my work really, I find that there are not that many things that are like what's the word? So like one thing is like a lot of design work, especially like digital design work, web work, graphic design maybe is even more durable, but a lot of like product design work is actually very like fickle. Like you work on something today, like 2 years down the line, you probably can't recognize that thing because it's just like it keeps changing, it keeps like morphing. So in terms of non-negotiable, I guess like this will feel like sidestepping the question a bit, but I do try to like work with good people and just like make sure that we can all enjoy the work while we're doing it. And it's like, yeah, I don't like how flowery rainbow that sounds, but really like the work itself,
Why
the work
not?
itself, like if you don't write, like the work will disappear, the work will go. Like obviously it will achieve
Yeah,
what it's trying to do, but in the end, like there
yeah.
are not that many things that are like that's life or death in what we're doing. And like at the end, when someone is leaving after like 12 years of working with them, or like 8 years or 4 years of working with, you don't really like, oh, that his button was bent. Like those are not the things
Nah.
that those are not the things that you care about, right?
Yeah,
So yeah, you
yeah.
remember like, oh, when we were working really hard on this thing, we were hanging out here, we did this thing. Like, when we launched, this was what happened. So yeah,
Yeah.
so in terms of the process of the design itself, I think if we all approach it with like enough curiosity, just intention, everybody's trying to like work as hard as they can and do the best work they can. There's not much else that is like because some people are really good. Like even this whole design notes thing, like it's really nice because like so for me, for example, um, if I don't see something, it doesn't feel like real to me yet. So I literally need to rely on this process so that I can think in like stages and get to like an end that makes sense. But for some people, like you tell them something and literally the first thing they do is like high fidelity Figma and it's like, bro, I would never have imagined this thing. So even in those situations, like while all the things in the middle are good, especially to like give everybody a base level, if someone really does good work and skips all of that, like we can figure out how to make the process like useful and good for everybody involved. So yeah, I think that's how.
There's also the thing on just like how do you guys approach design reviews, or just critiques, and then
Yeah,
making decisions on those calls. Like, how are who makes those calls when there is like it's some like there's now like a is either yes or no, and like is there democracy?
yeah,
Like, what does that look like? Yeah.
yeah. So first of all, we don't even run design critics like regularly anymore. We used to do this a lot last year, but these days, like, so we on the team we kind of have like champions for different things. So we have like a research champion, an accessibility champion,
You call it
and
champion?
so yeah, I think that's the easiest way to like say it. So it's like this person, if we need to do anything in this area that's like their expertise, like we go to them. And they like always usually have like a reason why this thing is so important to them and why they like decide to take up that kind of work. And so we used to have like an operation. I don't know what to call it, like a cultural. I don't know what to call it, whether it's a cultural champion. It was like a design manager, and she was like in charge of all the actually a design operations team, and they were in charge of all the like crates and setting up just well-being type stuff and like quality of work type stuff. We don't have that function anymore right now, and so a lot of the things that resulted from that function, and so now a lot of our crates are within the design team, like I mentioned before. There's a channel we do async and pull people in as needed, and then within like the wider product teams, it's like multiple. So every product team has like a channel, and that's kind of like the primary way of communicating. And that's where we share like our design notes, high fidelity, walkthrough videos, ideas, all the kinds of things that we're going for. Regarding who gets to make the decision, To what I've been pushing for recently, especially with like PMs and like just wider people, is like, yeah, on every team, like the person with the expertise makes the final decision. So if it's a design decision we're going to go for, like, yeah, so all of you say everything you want to say, but like at the end, what the designer says is what goes. And in the same way, like the engineer will make, like we'll talk about, oh, because like API design, for example, is something that we, well, when I say it like that, it sounds really big, but with Paystack is like a primarily, not primary, but like there's a heavy API product. Like our API is a product that people are using to like run their
I
business.
use it
And
exactly.
so exactly. And so and we have to be careful about like how we are naming things on the API, or like how we're adding things or breaking things, or like if we make a decision now, we have to be sure of that decision because we can't change it going forward. Because once people start using it, it's like you
They
can
already start
people
using,
set up
yeah.
their website and they don't bother touching it for
They
years
don't go
anyway.
back exactly.
Exactly. So so in those cases, like obviously the technical people, like we'll all give input and have like an open conversation, but the engineer, the CTO, like those people are the people that get the final decision. And then if it's like a goal setting vision type thing, obviously we'll all pitch in, we'll all try, but it's like the product person will do the final say. And so that's my like philosophy on like how to obviously, there's a confidence aspect. Like, if the PM himself is not confident in like, the decisions they're making, then they kind of like you start to see people hide from like taking not just the PM, the product, like any of the people in this situation. And in that case, it usually helps to have someone like more senior just help step in to guide the conversation. If not, we'll start having committees, decision making committees where six
Decision
people
by
are saying we should do it
committee.
like
Yeah.
this, we should do it
Yeah.
exactly, and that
Yeah,
can get
yeah,
very messy. Yeah.
yeah. You actually talked about this idea of how feedback is helpful when you know what you want, right?
Yeah.
Um, how have you been able to navigate this or just come to this conclusion?
Yeah, because I've seen people present work and be like, here are 16 options of like what they're trying to do. And
Wow.
that's not helpful. Well, not 16, but like you see people do three, five, and you ask like,
Yeah.
okay, what are you like? Why is this better than this? And it's just like, oh, I just made options because I don't really know what to do and I'm leaving it up to everybody else to figure it out for me. And so in that case, those that's just like a very fertile ground for a useless conversation because everybody now starts saying how they feel about everything that
How
you've
do
posted. And design is so subjective that everybody can have an opinion. Like even someone who has never colored colored inside the lines in their life can say the blue is better than the red. Yeah, so so like as the designer as well, knowing the audience you're talking to, like you can do that when you're talking to other designers, at least at Paystack, because we typically would say like we wouldn't just go in like we typically know how we want to receive feedback or like how we technically like to work. So we would ask more questions to try and figure out what you're trying to solve for. But if you did that on like company all hands where 300 people are sitting, like you just the chat will just go crazy and like nobody will actually get a decision. So I think yeah, knowing what you want, having like so that's why the curiosity is important, right? Because the reason you don't know what you want is because you're not even sure of the problem you're solving, and you kind of just they said this thing will work like this, so I just did one screen, but they also said this part, and I don't really know the difference, so I just did two of them, and like we'll see. You guys can pick. Yeah, so I think the curiosity will make you know enough to have the confidence to be like, I think this is the answer, but this is what's wrong with it, and this is what I want you guys to compare to it.
When did you figure this out? Was this something you've always held on to or just along the line?
It was when I started working with, like, I guess leading, being a product design lead, where there's people like working with me, and just like when you start to work with, when you work with four or five newer people and see like how they are ending up, you start to find like the patterns. Like, oh, the problem is not that you can't design. The problem is just that you're too afraid to ask the question that will tell you the direction to go. And instead of like stopping to ask, you just did like four things and said and brought it up to me. So yeah. So usually the answer in that situation is to like just give the person more context, help them think through like what they're trying to do, and then let them go back. And sometimes they don't even need to go back. Sometimes they actually know what they want. They're just too scared to say it.
To make a decision, to make that call.
Yeah,
Makes
exactly.
sense. I want to touch on use your strong opinion on this idea of how design tools, especially Figma, is and how they're feeling designers. Um,
Yeah.
How did this? Is this something? Obviously, this is something that you hold very strongly as an opinion.
Yeah.
But just talk me through
Yeah.
that.
So I previously used to think like this was general. I thought everybody felt like this. But then 2020 was when Clubhouse, Twitter Spaces, all these things were popping. And I was just like, I'd like to. So the reason I'm in design, let me like zoom out a bit. So I got to design not because like I was trying to get into design. I got to design because like I decided to do computer science in uni without knowing anything about it really. I knew I liked to play games on computers, and I knew like I just wanted to. If I was in uni, I wanted a computer, and this seemed like the easiest way to finesse my dad out of a computer for me. Yeah,
Yeah,
so I was just like, yeah, I'm going to get a computer. I'll mess around with it. I used to do like all the paints, like just all the normal things that secondary school, primary school kids
inside
would
the
do on
computer.
computer.
Mm.
Exactly. And then I got into uni, and like some of my friends were like writing code on their phones. I'm like, what's this thing? And he's like, oh, I can like tell my computer what to do, and it will like add numbers for me. And I'm just like, I was just so mind blown by like, I guess the automation of it, or like the talking to a computer of it and getting. And so like I kind of started getting into like programming from there, and then I like and then I would try to build something, and then I would learn that, oh damn, to build an Android app is not just like a nice design on the app. You might need a backend to like save all the stuff that the person does on the app so that you can put. And then I'm like, how do you do that? And then I go and check how to do that, and then I learn like some of the backend stuff. I'm like, oh damn, okay, cool. But to do like a backend thing, you need a website to get, and then I learn how to do. So I kind of just like kept like as I do something, I
Going.
figure something else that needs to do, and it didn't even occur to me that not one person does this whole thing like end to end, right? So I just kept like doing it, and then in uni I started. Luckily, I was in Lagos, so CC Hub, Yabacon Valley was around, so it was just like I started to find other people that were doing it, and then started learning about specializations and different things, and then I like, actually got into like tech proper. And so my main interest is not in like I don't care about designing nice things in isolation. I want my whole thing is that I've always wanted to like when I'm done, I want to see the thing and use it and like interact with it and let it do things for me, like that kind of stuff, and other people. And so it's just crazy to me that somehow we've convinced ourselves as designers that our only part of the work is that someone tells us what to do, and then we like draw nice pictures, and then we give the pictures to someone else. And then it's also crazy to me, like even me that like I can design and code, like to get something done nicely, I have to like draw the picture for myself and then finish, and then I go and start writing the code from scratch. I'm like, how is there no way to go from this directly to this? And I think that's like the thing that blows my mind the most. And it seems like a like initially this was even before AI became like so serious. I'm like, there has to be a way to do this because we had like Dreamweaver in the olden days where
Then,
it's like drag and drop, and like that was like design and code together. Obviously, that wasn't going to work. But like, why has nobody taken that idea and like turned it into like or adapted it to like life now?
transformed
And
it
I
into
guess more and more
something.
people are doing it. Like Framer is doing
I'm
it, and I
starting
really
to
like what
think
they're doing. Exactly, Framer is doing it.
Webflow.
Clay is doing it for iOS. But I think like Webflow, even I don't think they're doing it well. But that's a conversation for another day.
I mean,
Like,
it's still a
yeah.
bit technical, but it still
Exactly,
works.
exactly. Like, well, like it seems so obvious to me that Figma should be the one doing this. Like, you have all our designs. Like, we all use it every day. It's already on the board. Like, why can't I just finish a prototype and have it be like an app, a site, a whatever? And I know it's a hard problem, but yeah, maybe that's the next problem. If I've been complaining about this for like 4 years now, so maybe if it keeps being a problem, I'll start exploring it too. But yeah, it's
Right?
just crazy to me.
Uh,
Like I design something and I have to like find a front end person that's like will
to
do
do
deliver on
it,
time. Like, I'm like,
the
why?
gap is still
Yeah. And the
evident,
front end people
still
don't even
there.
enjoy it. They're always complaining about CSS, HTML. So like nobody's enjoying this thing, but we just have this step in our process that's just like yeah.
Not
So it's crazy to
enjoyable,
me.
but needs to get
The first
done.
time I mentioned it to a group of designers, they were just like, "Oh, what do you mean? What do you mean by that? I don't think so." I'm like, "Wow, so this is actually not a general consensus." Yeah, and
No, I
yeah,
really I
so
really think so. Um, I
yeah,
think I really need to have that. For me, it's just a thing of if I have spent like all this time designing this thing to be this particular way, I want
Exactly.
to see people use it in this particular exact way
Exactly.
because I can
Exactly.
control that. So that's how I think
Exactly.
about it really. It's just
Exactly.
that you know
Exactly.
how all these memes about how is the design versus how is the code. It's just a
Yeah.
thing of the different literally the different people that different personalities that worked on those things because they are
Yeah.
not the same people. The
Yeah.
consistency is not going.
Even with things like design systems, for example, it's crazy to me that I'll finish doing the design system, like buttons, this thing, and then somebody has to start again from scratch and just read it. Yeah, like just the
To
duplication of
code.
work, just
Yeah.
it stresses me out, and I think like yeah, more people should help us with that. Everybody will be happier.
I think you touched on how you guys no longer do design crits and it's now like design reviews.
Yeah, it's not gone
And
forever,
how that
sure, but hopefully
how
soon
I
it will
mean
be back.
how that now is async XYZ, right? You touched on
Yeah.
that. Okay, so is it async till the end of a project and product building? Like, what is how is that? How does that go, or just fizzle out?
How do you mean?
Like, are the reviews always async up until the end of the project?
Um, so not necessarily. So sometimes we have like for long running stuff, especially on the product side, we have check-ins to see like how's this thing going. We have so if there's something that's been done that is not being reviewed, then we all just do it together, either on a call or in person or something. So
Okay,
yeah, but
so
a lot of the times async, and sometimes there's just like the people that you wanted to review the thing just didn't answer you, which is fine too. And so it's always nice to have those calls where you can like hold them down and say, "Look at this thing and tell me what."
see this thing, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. So like obviously like the people that have stakes to stakeholders get on
yeah,
those particular calls. Okay.
yeah,
I guess the last question from me is just like because Paystack has been one of the most successful startups out of Nigeria, they have found a way to build like a really strong design team
yeah.
operating at the highest levels. I mean, how do you guys at Paystack approach like hiring designers?
When I joined Paystack, there was like a design internship. Like Opera has always like wanted to like I guess give people that are newer like space to join something and like do work and learn and do yeah. So um yeah, there was an internship program that we did, and I think a lot of the people that we not a lot of the people, so some of the people that we ended up hiring were like from that cohort of people. And then when student was still a thing as well, there was like another like we did some teaching courses. I don't know what, like a talk, yeah. And then they interned with us for like a few weeks, and someone joined the team as a result of that. And then more recently, we've had like the Future Stacks program where we hire people that we think will be like good fits down the line and basically work with them for a fixed period. And we didn't hire anybody on design from that program, but other teams like engineers, we got some engineers from that program. So I guess that's one way of like thinking about it, where is we kind of catch people young and then work with them a bit. Even me, like even when I got hired, I had worked with Okwe outside of Paystack. I worked with him to build like the first post YC website, like as a contractor, like while I was in school. And then they like when he wanted to actually work with someone full time on Paystack, he pulled me in. So I think that's one way that we find people. It's like finding people to work with, working with them for a short period of time, and then like working with them, committing to it. Another way is like there's just some people that we've spoken to for like a year. Like we just know this person exists. We touch base with them, like, oh, this person sent an email 2 years ago and we spoke, but it wasn't the right time. And then we spoke again like 2 weeks ago, and then last like we just to the point where it's like they are working with us, but they're not working with us, but like we're just all keeping tabs. It's like, oh, you should try this,
In
you should do
touch.
this, like that kind of. Yeah, and then finally, like sometimes people interview and it's like, they're not ready yet, and like we go back, go back and do what you're doing. I can imagine that process must be difficult for people as well. But it has also like resulted in some people that have been like really good to work with. And then sometimes someone just finds somebody. It's like, bro, I just saw this person in a bar and they are doing work and I think it's really good. And they send us like the work and we're like, damn, we've been looking for this since, and we talked to the person and it happened. So
Yeah.
yeah, but I think like Paystack in general has like a, so hiring is not just something that we just sit down and say, oh, this person come join Paystack. It's kind of like a cross-functional. Like sometimes the process is even like just too long and stressful, but it's like something that we take very seriously. And if everybody is not like, we should definitely do
Convinced.
this, and we know what's exactly, then we typically don't. Yeah, so I think those are like the general things. I'm sure like by now, Ope specifically would have like, because these days he's just like, he'll just be like, I saw this person on Twitter and I know. And then we like go through the process and the person is just mind blowing. I'm like, how is that this person with a random avatar that's this like that just posted like three design tweets and it's just like, yeah, I can tell that this person will be good. And if we can figure out a way to get this person to be, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, there are different ways. There sometimes some people just apply and just blow. Like is really from different angles. Really.
The
Yeah,
angles, yeah.
yeah.
That's great. That's great. That's great.
But in the end,
Um,
everybody kind of goes through the same process, so it ends up
at the end,
hopefully being like fair. Yeah.
true, 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 true. Yeah, I think that will be the end of this interview. Great. I think that we had some interesting conversations, and I can't wait to see what this turns out to be.